This is the story of Richard Henyard. Born in Eustis, Florida, Richard's childhood was tainted by his parents, with his father being completely absent and his mother drinking and doing drugs while she was pregnant with him. When he was just 10 months old, his mother was suffering from severe alcoholism, and his neighbor decided to take him in. And she had kept him till he was around 3 years old. That's when his mother decided that she wanted him back. But his welcome home was very temporary because his mother quickly went back to her old habits. This caused Richard to be what they called a door-to-door child, shuffling from relatives and neighbors while his mother abandoned him, or she might have been locked up. 7 to 8 years old, Richard experienced severe sexual trauma, being repeatedly molested by a man named Big Red that lived in the neighborhood. Now, even though Richard was vocal about this abuse, nothing ever happened. Around that same age, his mother was known to have chaotic extramarital affairs with men and women. With this reputation, Richard became a target. The neighborhood kids would bully him and beat him up on a regular basis. By the time he was 11, his mother had completely abandoned him, and his father decided to step in for the first time, asking Richard to come live with him in Pahogee, Florida. And Richard is happy about this. He's finally got his father, but once he started living with his father, he started experiencing severe physical abuse. His father would beat him with belts, extension cord, wooden planks, or just his fists. As he got older, his maturity stayed on the level of a 13-year-old, causing him to fall behind his age group, and he gravitated more towards younger boys. When he was just 15 years old, he started to pick up his mother's habits with heavily drinking alcohol. He had got so drunk one night, he decided to rob a convenience store, only getting away with $70, but his ass got arrested. In late 1992, now 18 years old, Richard felt like he wasn't getting the attention from his father that he always wanted, so he decided to leave and make his way back down to Eustis, Florida, and stay with a family friend. But only about a month after he had left his father's house, Richard noticed that his father was not checking for him. He was not out looking for him, trying to see where he was at, and that made Richard feel some type of way. So he decided to steal the gun of the guy that he was living with. On January 29th, 1993, Richard had told his 14-year-old friend, Alphonsa Smalls. Alphonsa lived in the same neighborhood as him, and the two became close. Richard had told Alphonsa that he had stole the gun because he wanted to steal a car so he can drive back to Pahogee, Florida to see his father. It was clear that he was in desperate need of his father's attention. It wasn't until that next day, which was Saturday, January 30th, Richard decided to ask a neighborhood kid if he could help him steal a car, and that kid declined. He said, hell no. So he went to 14-year-old Alphonsa, and Alphonsa said, yeah, I'll help. The two made their way to Winn-Dixie grocery store on State Road 19 to scope out potential targets, and it didn't take them long. They had their eye on a lady named Lynette who was leaving the store and walking to her car, and when she seen the two approaching her, she held up a portable siren on her keychain and triggered it. The loud sound made these two idiots run and hide, but they emerged minutes later to continue their search. 35-year-old Dorothy Lewis was inside of the Winn-Dixie. Dorothy grew up in Florida, and she was known for her exceptional singing voice. She was very deep in the church, and just a month prior, she had lost her husband, leaving her a widow, taking care of her two daughters, 7-year-old Jamila and 3-year-old Jasmine. The three were shopping for items for church service in the morning, and when they were finished and making their way to their car, Dorothy put the groceries in the car and strapped her daughters in their car seats. And when she was making her way to the driver's side, she noticed the two young men approaching her. Richard pulled the gun from his waistband and forced Dorothy in the back seat with her daughters. As they were driving away, she's begging them, can you please let my children go? I will stay. And Richard said that I can't do that. They drove to a remote area and forced Dorothy out the car. As they started to sexually assault her, she begged them, please don't do this in front of my daughters. And Dorothy put up a fight. They had set the gun down at one point and she reached for it, even though one of them got to it first. After the assault, Dorothy began to pray, and one of the men is telling her to sit down, and she just would not do it. So he said that this ain't Jesus, this is Satan, and he shot her in her knee. When Dorothy was down, Richard put the gun up to her forehead and pulled the trigger. He then shot her 2 more times in her jaw and in her neck. The two had fled the scene, leaving her there. Now, when they got back in the car, the two children are hysterical at this point. So they drove a short distance and forced the two children out the car as well. They're pleading for their mother as they're walking them into this wooded area. They had shot the oldest one in her head and shot the youngest one in her eye and threw their bodies over a barbed wire fence into some bushes. The two fled the scene and went back to Eustis to a neighborhood friend's house, which I thought you were going to see your daddy. But when they pulled up at the friend's house, they asked for a change of clothes and the friend gave it to them. And after changing their clothes, they're bragging about what they just did. And the two eventually just goes home. Now, the next morning, Richard decided to go pay Alfonso a visit because he's a little nervous at this point because he's only 14 and he might snitch. So he's trying to make sure that Alfonso keep his mouth closed. Richard asked his aunts, who were on their way to the laundromat, if they could take him to Alfonso's house, and they agreed, but they said we going to the laundromat first. The laundromat just happened to be right across the street from the Winn-Dixie. When the three got to the laundromat, his two aunts went inside of the Winn-Dixie to get some laundry detergent. While they were in there, the police just happened to be in there asking everybody about if they seen anything yesterday and said that it was $1,000 reward out for any type of information. And the aunts went back to the laundromat where Richard was and started talking about it. And Richard heard that Dorothy was still alive. He's shocked at this point and he tried to hurry up and come with a lie. So he told his aunts that we can get that $1,000 reward because I seen what happened yesterday. And they like, what? What? We're going down to the police station right now. When they got down to the police station, Richard blamed everything on the 14-year-old. He blamed him and he made up some fictional ass name. And as he's saying this outlandish story, the detectives are looking at his socks and his shoes. Both are full of blood. When they asked about the blood on his socks and his shoes, he knew he was busted. He immediately started to confess, but he said, I did not kill the little girls. They went and picked up Alfonso that same day, and he told absolutely everything from the beginning to the end. Despite their confessions, the two pled not guilty, and Richard's trial was in June of 94, and he still stood 10 toes down that he did not kill the children, but forensics evidence said differently. They said that the blood splatter on his jacket, his shorts, and his socks could only come from somebody who was holding the gun. He was found guilty on all 8 counts: attempted murder, rape, robbery, you name it. He was found guilty of it. And in August of 94, they sentenced him to death. As for Alfonso, his trial started in October of 94, and his age is the only reason why he did not get the death penalty because he was a very willing participant, down to the point where he was telling Richard to hurry up when he was sexually assaulting Dorothy so he could get his turn. He was also found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But fuck them. I want to talk about Dorothy. On the night of the crime, Dorothy regained consciousness around 2 a.m. Remember, they had shot her in her knee so she could not walk. She crawled until she got to the road. A passerby seen her, stopped, and called for help. When she got to the hospital and preparing to give her statement, she remembered everything. This lady got shot in her head, her jaw, her neck, and she was still able to give a full description. They didn't find her girls until the next morning around 8 a.m. This is her at one of their trials testifying against them. And I'm just amazed by her comeback. She looked like nothing had ever even happened to her. She has 4 metal plates and 24 screws in her skull. She lost vision out of her right eye, and she lost her sense of taste and smell. After her recovery, she went to school. She got a degree in counseling. She became a 3rd grade teacher. She got married again. She had a son. She's a co-pastor alongside her husband. She kept her last name in honor of her daughters. Rest in peace to them. On September 23rd, 2008, Richard was executed, and she did not attend the execution. She said it was not going to bring her daughters back, so it really didn't matter to her. She said she forgave them because not forgiving them was turning her into a bitter person, and she did not want that. Alfonso, who is now 47, has been trying to get paroled. I think 2019 was the last time he had tried. He had wrote letters apologizing, saying that he was 14, his mind was young. Boy, fuck you. You should die in there. The young man who had gave them a change of clothes on the night of the crime, he had ended up getting like 22 months or something like that. But Miss Dorothy, you are truly covered, Miss Ma'am, because man, this story was unbelievable. What y'all think, Yellow Tape?